soon as I see it pop up here that we're being, okay, so we are being recorded, everyone. So first of all, welcome. This is the first one, first virtual meeting for legislative updates for this session. Session starts on Tuesday. So this is kind of a recap of what we have so far. I think I make this little speech every year, but it might seem a little light as we go through it here in the beginning, but it will not end that way. So as we go along week to week, you'll see more and more things showing up, and you'll see, things starting to move, and you'll see things starting to drop off our list that aren't moving, so on and so on. So it's kind of it's a very fluid situation now for the next 8 or 9 weeks. I'm going to start out, and Edie, I might ask you to jump in here and help as well. Back in October, we released our recommendations for inspections of existing structures. I'm titling it that way now to keep the name Surfside out of it, because it's a bigger problem than Surfside. Surfside certainly put the spotlight on it, but we have since found it's a bigger problem, than I think people thought it was, and it's not just a Florida problem. I mean, I've had discussions at the national level. They have some of the same issues in other states, and it doesn't necessarily have to be coastal. They just evacuated a condominium complex in Wisconsin a few weeks ago. So, it's happening a little bit everywhere. But for here in Florida, our recommendations were very, very simple. We formed this group not long after the Surfside collapse, and it really started because of the reporters that were calling and the questions they were asking. At first, they were asking, why did the tower fall? And we completely stayed away from that. There's an investigation. It's going to take some time, and we're not going to try to guess or predict what happened there. So we stayed away from that. We just went totally towards well, let me just say we stayed away from that at that point. Then the questions from the reporters changed, and it became, okay, what's going to be done to prevent this from happening in the future? And that's where we kind of rose up, and I pulled together some structural engineers, really just to help me answer the questions the reporters were asking. And that turned into us meeting with several other groups. We ended up meeting twice a week for a number of weeks, and finally released our recommendations in October. And really what we have recommended is a 2-phase inspection process that would occur on the 20th year or before for buildings that are within 3 miles of the coast, at least 30 years inland. And then for the ones on the coast, every 10 years after, and for the ones, every 7 years after, for the ones inland, every 10 years after. The main reason for that is, we believe that the vast majority of the owners and the managers of these buildings, do a decent job of maintaining their buildings, but we know that there are some out there that don't. And those have to be identified so that they can be repaired so that they don't fall. And this gets our folks in there, people that know, what they're looking at in there to take a look. The first phase is really just a visual inspection, looking for any signs of distress, so on. If something is found, then it moves to the second phase, which really is up to the engineer in charge of the inspection as to how deep they go. Some may have to, be a little more intrusive than others, but again, that's totally up to the engineer that is doing the inspection, and we didn't put any types of rules or anything like that in our recommendation. One key thing we did was the duty of the person doing the inspection is to the building official or to the building department, not to the owner of the building. And that means that, a bad report can't be stuck in a desk somewhere and not addressed, or, that it goes to the building official as well as the owner, and the building official becomes responsible to make sure that the repairs are completed.
Hey, and Alan, let me add one thing to that. That wasn't just us making that recommendation. That's the way the law is written. We're just clarifying that so everybody's clear on what the responsibilities of who are.
Okay. All right. And then one of our final recommendations is that, eventually the requirements for inspection of existing structures be incorporated into the Florida Building Code. And I know ICC has put together some stuff related to that, but the problem is that the next edition of the Florida Building Code won't come out till 2023. So we've got time in between here that we feel they should be doing something. And then even in 2023, the way the building commission works, if they miss that and they don't get it in there 2023, it's going to be 3 years later in 2026. So we feel as though something needs to be done. So we've gotten quite a bit. For those that don't know, we've gotten quite a bit of press off of this. When we first released the report, our recommendations, it showed up in hundreds of news, newspapers, websites, what have you, around the world, actually. And since then, it continues to pop up. There's been a little over the last week or so. There's been some noise coming from some of the media outlets about, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And a lot of them mention, our recommendation. So Edie, if you could just real quick, just kind of pop in on that, what you've seen here over the last couple of weeks.
Yes, absolutely. You are definitely seeing in some pre-session related statewide articles where they are bringing up Surfside. However, I would say that for the majority of the pre-session articles, they're really focusing on the top 10 issues, and Surfside's not necessarily making it into the top 10. Top 10 issues being increasing teacher pay, property insurance types of issues. However, this issue does continue each week. We're seeing coverage of it in various locations, and it does also pop up in articles in different states where they're also having building issues. And today I want to just let you know that I was able to read an article out of South Florida, where they're basically saying that there's a major national condo reform that's quietly going into effect, even without government intervention. And that's basically because Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are now requiring certain types of broader inspections before they begin to lend dollars for condos. So, I think that kind of falls in line with what Alan had kind of looked into the magic 8 ball and said is likely to happen, along with how insurance companies are going to be insuring in the future, our properties, insuring properties in the future. So this is going to continue to pop up. And also, I should let you know that today, just in the last 30 or 45 minutes, I've issued a press release letting Capital Press Corps, statewide business, and building and engineering related news outlets to know that professional engineers will be in Florida's capital next week, and that you will be encouraging lawmakers to consider the Surfside Working Group recommendations. So anticipate more coverage.
Okay. So I don't want to spend a whole bunch more time on that. I did have a call a few weeks back with major staff member in the House, let's just say, and the state is doing a assessment of its risks. They do every 10 years or so, and they kind of added this in. And just one thing that caught me during that conversation was the gentleman we were talking to that from the insurance company that's doing this risk assessment is based out of London, England, and he said that he had talked with folks from Citizens Property Insurance who were gearing up to take on a lot of condo policies. So I don't know how far down the road the insurers are as far as making changes, or if that's going to come to fruition, but they are at least preparing for that. So And they could do it as Edie mentioned. I've talked about this before. That the insurance companies could do it without legislation. They can simply say, we're not going to cover you unless you inspect these every 5 years or every 10 years or, you know, whatever. And they could take care of the problem. But until they do, I think, you know, we need to be pushing for what we think is right and what we think needs to be done. Do we have any questions on that issue? If not, let me just run through a few that, you know, have come up that our CLGR legislative committee has addressed over the last few weeks. The first one I have on the list is Senate Bill 398, House Bill 157. They just say transportation projects. I see my my synopsis here is a bit outdated. The strike all amendment was adopted in the Senate, so that's the bill now. What that does is includes provisions for progressive design build contracts. If we need to go into detail on that, I think I heard JW on the call, but our folks seem to like it that have dealt with it before. It's going to only affect like mega projects over $250 million. But our folks do seem to like that. The only problem with this bill, and I don't have it in the synopsis right here, it's got some language in there that we saw last year in a bill that would put a cap on the amount of money that can come from the trust fund each year for things like seaports and airports and other types of projects. Currently, they're required to do at least 15%, but there's no upper limit, and they would put an upper limit in there of 25%. And last year we opposed that. It's not I don't know that it's a fall on the sword kind of thing, because rarely do they hit 25% for those kinds of projects. But, you know, just knowing what's going on with the ports and the shortages and all of that stuff in the supply chain right now, you know, it wouldn't be, you know, out of the realm of possibilities for Florida to want to put some money into its port. So just something we need to watch for there. The next one is going to be an important bill.
Hey, Alan.
Yeah.
This is Derek. I'm sorry. Can I just jump in real quickly before you go to number 2? I want to share with the group that there was a conversation Wednesday where the Transit Association lobbyists, our firm represents the Airport Council, so I was on there along with Mike from the ports, did a call with the sponsor, Senator Hooper, in regards to what you mentioned about that percentage. Was very receptive to that. So there's ongoing conversations about the cap. I'll also tell you that DOT has privately raised concerns about that cap. They haven't gone on the record yet. So there's still conversations being had about that. I just want to make sure that's known on the record.
Yeah, and Derek, as you know, there's a different person in charge of the seaports.
Right.
You know, I knew Doug Wheeler really well, and you know, Doug was one of the first people that came and talked to me when that bill came out last year. I don't have the same relationship with the new guy, so you know, please help keep me in the loop on that.
Will do.
And Alan, I can help you with that. They're my client.
Well, good. Y'all just handle it then. All right, so moving on, this one's going to be an important one. This construction defect claims, it's really coming from the home builders. Their major, as I've talked to them, their major issue within this bill is these right to cure procedures. You know, how long do the homeowners have to, you know, report a problem? How long do the contractors have to fix it? So on and so on. And that can, you know, also get into the engineering industry as well in certain situations. But there's another provision in there that basically would strike the 10-year statute of repose for latent defects. It's always been my thought on this that, okay, maybe they're kind of shooting it. Maybe they put that in there, you know, as something to trade away, or something that, you know, maybe instead of 10, it becomes 7 or something along those lines. But it is my understanding, and I can't go too deep into this. I talked to John the other day. There is a very influential legislator who wants to do something about the statute of repose. And his plan would be to do this later in session rather than get it out there now and get the trial lawyers all fired up. So just be watching for that. I'll be watching for that. I know You know, a lot of our members would like to see that statute of repose, you know, at least reformed, if not repealed, especially our geotechs who can be on the hook for quite some time. So, you know, much longer than 10 years in many cases. So that's an important one that we'll be watching. It's got two good sponsors too. So, you know, I think we're going to see some movement on that one. And then the third one that we have there for support is the professional structural engineer license. We've seen that one for a few years, and you know, we'll do what we can to help. I know I talked to Zaina the other day, and she's been in contact with the lobbyists, you know, from the Structural Engineers Association, and has spoken with them about it. I'll just be honest with you, the Board of Professional Engineers doesn't really think it's necessary, but they're not really going to do anything to try to stop it. So if that's what the legislature wants, they're perfectly willing to provide that. So I don't think there's any problems from their end, but you know, they did, I think, express a couple of concerns to the structural engineers. The one that we have on here is monitor, and let me take a quick look here. 771. That's the first bill. Actually, it's about the only bill right now. Okay, it does have a companion now in the Senate, 1604, that was just filed yesterday. So, so we do have that one. Let me get back to my other screen here. And what that is, you know, what this bill does is it kind of skips everything else that we recommended and goes straight to, you know, requiring the Florida Building Commission to develop the standards for the maintenance and inspections of existing building structures. Again, I think we need something in the meantime until that can happen. But on the other side, that's kind of our end goal of our recommendations anyway. So we're just kind of keeping an eye on it right now. Keith Perry now has it in the Senate, so they've got a good, you know, couple of sponsors on each side. So we may see some movement out of that. Or they may have something else planned. They're holding all this pretty close to the vest right now, and I don't have real clear indications on where leadership wants to go, if they want to go anywhere at all with this issue this year. So, you know, we'll keep on top of it, and you know, through the press and other means, you know, we'll try to keep some pressure on to see if we can't get something done. But ultimately, that's where we want to be, is where this bill is, and that is to have the Florida Building Commission, you know, adopt that into the building code. Okay, and then a few others here that we're going to oppose. The fuel sales tax removes the annual indexing of fuel sales tax rates. We've had that index for quite some time. I don't know if this is a reaction. It's a Democrat. I don't expect that it's going to get very far. But it might be a reaction just to rising fuel prices. I'm not sure. We haven't talked to him, but you know, we have voted to oppose, you know, removing the index on the fuel sales tax rates. The next one, House Bill 6089, the purchase of plant material for construction projects. This language was actually combined with that language that would put a cap on the seaports and airports and what they can get from the trust fund. It was all one bill last year, so they've separated out this part. We always get asked to help with these types of bills. They're not necessarily of huge importance to us, but you know, probably should just be left alone. Your big nurseries, plant nurseries, and those types of people will take the lead on the opposition on this. But you know, if we can help nudge it into the lose column, you know, we'll do that. And then these final two, you know, popped up just before the holidays. So the acquisition of professional services, I know, you know, I'm not sure how every agency acts on this, but I know, you know, FDOT goes, you know, to great lengths to make sure that, you know, projects are distributed amongst the engineering firms out there, and everybody gets a fair shake and get some work. This would require agencies from doing that, or which removes the language that requires the agencies to do that. So they wouldn't have to. Doesn't necessarily say they couldn't. It just says they don't have to. So, you know, I think our folks are, you know, comfortable with the program that we have, and don't necessarily want to see that changed. Jump in at any time, guys, if you have questions on any of these.
And Alan, just for that last one you mentioned, there is now a Senate companion. It's SB 1520 by Senator Gruters. He filed yesterday.
Oh, that's the one you notified us about.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we do have a Senate sponsor there. And I just don't know. I mean, I need to look into it a little bit more. I don't know how much. It's kind of vaguely written, and I'm not sure how much that gets into, say, you know, your disadvantaged business programs and that sort of thing. It seems to me like it's certainly touching it. But, you know, I don't know. I'll have to take a deeper look to see, you know, does it really affect those statutes, or is this more of a standalone type of thing? But since it got a Senate companion now, I'll pay a little more attention to it. Okay, so the next ones are Senate Bill 886 and House Bill 515, municipal water and sewer utility rates. This basically says that if one municipality serves customers in another municipality, they can only charge them the same as they're charging, you know, their own, the people within their own municipality, that there cannot be any surcharges or anything like that on the municipality that's receiving the services from another. Our folks in that arena think that's a bad idea, so we voted to oppose on that. Peter, I don't know if you want to jump in on that anymore, or it's more Shaw or one of you guys. Or I did a really good job of explaining that.
I mean, quite honestly, it's pretty straightforward. And we're talking about service areas, and if one utility company is providing service to a separate municipality or a service group, then they have additional expenses that they're incurring to do that, and to keep that fee to the same as what they charge their own service area is unreasonable. Does that clarify it? Then?
All right, and at this point again, we have voted to oppose that. And then the next one, 621, I'm not sure, they're coming fast and furious if we've gotten a companion yet for this one. But this would prohibit state funding for local government infrastructure projects if the government transfers any of the utility revenues to provide for just general government functions. And I think I know here in Tallahassee they do. You know, from the electric utility that we have here. So I assume most of them would. So that seems like it could have a pretty big effect as well.
And Alan, it does now have a Senate companion. Senator Broxson, 1162, I believe it has filed a companion to this one.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll get all of those bills, you know, on this report and get this report, you know, cleaned up a little bit for next time. You know, we will start seeing things move. I guess the final day to file bills will be, you know, first of next week when session starts. So then we'll kind of know what we have, and you know, I know we've got. For those that don't know, you basically have 3 sets of eyes, you know, going through these things all the time. And that is my own. We have Laura here in our office, or, you know, works out of Orlando, but works directly for us. And then staff over at Derek and John's place, you know, also have, you know, we have a lot of keywords. We have a lot of statutes and everything loaded into a system that if anything appears that affects those, we get a notification. So, we're watching them very closely, and you know, as was mentioned a little while ago, there's just, you know, there's going to be a lot of other things going on. We have, you know, redistricting is going to be a big deal. It's going to take a lot of time. They just now, I think in the Senate, filed the bills for that, although they're shell bills. They don't have any information in them, but the bills are there. There's always plenty of fighting that goes on when they start to change the districts. So that will take a lot of time. We also have issues, as I think Edie mentioned, on property insurance and some other areas. And that might get more critical depending on how this condo issue goes. But we'll see on some of those things. And then I had something else in mind, and it's kind of slipped my mind here, but they'll get moving on these types of bills like this. And, as I said, we'll see some of them start to move. We'll see some of them, start to fall off. We probably, we've got several dozens of bills that we actually have on our tracking list. And for one reason or another, we just don't have them, at the top of the list at this point. It might be who the sponsors are. It might be that they don't have companions in the other chamber. It might be any number of reasons, but there's a number of them that we're watching. So, and the one thing I don't think we're going to see this year that we talked about a lot on these calls last year is the cap on CEI and design rates for FDOT projects. I wouldn't put that at 100% promise, but everything we're hearing right now is that there are more issues with, rising material prices and what have you in the transportation world. And that's hopefully not going to be an issue this year. So with that, we're a few minutes short of 10 o'clock. Does anybody have any questions, or have you seen other bills? I mean, if you see bills that interest you that for some reason we're not catching on to the importance, please don't hesitate to let us know. Let me know, let Laura know. We are, just so everybody knows, I hope we're coming out of it, but yesterday we have 9 full-time employees and 2 part-time, and 4 out of the 9 were out of the office yesterday. So we're trying to get ready for PE days next week, and we're kind of struggling and scrambling to make sure everything gets done, but we'll make sure that happens. And if you're coming next week, I look forward to seeing you. And if not, you might want to consider coming up and speaking with your legislators. So,
hey, Alan, this is Derek. Can I add one thing before we sign off?
Sure.
Just want to make sure everybody's aware, in case you didn't know, GOA, which is the Greater Orlando Airport or Aviation, they're a client of the Airport Council. They've narrowed down their list of finalists for the CEO position. They're down to 6 people. One of those 6 people is Secretary Tebow from DOT. And so they're going to announce as early as next week who the new CEO will be. There's a lot of rumors that he's the front runner. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I know 4 of the 6 finalists are internal aviation employees. So there is a high assumption that he may be their front runner, but they'll be announcing it as early as next week. And if it goes his way, I think he'll end up starting after session, of course, but he is a finalist for that job. So I want to make sure everybody knows that.
That's good information. Thanks, Derek. So you got any feelers out there on who the next DOT secretary would be?
I do not, because honestly, as you know, the chief of staff, Tori Austin, was appointed by the governor as one of the new Broward County commissioners, and he hasn't even been sworn in yet. He's still in his chief of staff capacity, as well as getting ready to be commissioner, because EOG really hasn't released him yet. They've had a hard time letting go of DOT personnel, and so I haven't heard of anyone yet. I mean, the one thing I heard is maybe somebody coming from DC, from a president's administration. I'm not sure, but they will have a little time. I'm quite sure Tebow will agree to stay on at least through session and then give them some time. But I'll keep you posted if I hear anything.
Great.
Derek, this is JW. What I've heard is that if that does occur, there would be an interim secretary, and the new secretary wouldn't be named until after the election in the fall. Now, that's a long time if they announce it this week, but that was one of the scenarios that I'd heard.
And JW, actually, I can see that actually happening. I mean, this administration has been slow of appointing anyone, but also it's easier to keep an interim to the election and start fresh in January of 23.
Well, and especially if Tebow stays on through session, because then now you're into, mid-March, and you got an election coming up in November, so it would make sense to do it interim until the election.
And just so that everyone know, there has been some articles mid-December before the holidays out of Orlando Sentinel regarding, the interviews and things of that nature. I missed most of those, and so there have been a few articles about him being one of the finalists and things of that nature. So getting a lot of attention there in Orlando. There were several legislators, including Senator Hooper, who I met earlier this week. He wasn't even aware that was a possibility of happening. So be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Thanks, Alan.
Sure. No, great information. I appreciate it. Okay, so everybody should now have the invites for this meeting will occur every Friday morning at 9:30 for the rest of session, which I believe ends March the 11th, if I've got that date correct. And then we would probably do one more, after session ends. But if you don't have the whole series of the links, please let us know, and we'll get these cleaned up and get these reports out a little bit earlier coming in the future. We're just, like I said, kind of struggling right now to make sure everything gets done that we need done here over the next week or two. And but we will carry on. And if nobody has any questions, I will steal a line from Peter Moore and say, I'll give you 27 minutes of your life back.
Good job, Alan.
Great job, Alan.
See you all next week.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye, Alan.
Bye-bye.
Get well.
Thank you.